Hello, middle schoolers. Welcome to a presentation on the immune system. So this goes with the Zoom presentation that we did a while ago, but this can stand on its own as a presentation on the immune system. I went ahead and got some help from Mr. Collin, made sure I got all my cards and everything right. But I also found some interesting cards in the science room, and you will have a follow-up activity for this video. And that follow-up activity will be to write out these terms and their definitions in a Google document and post that to Google Classroom. So the first one is cell, the basic building block of life. Cells are the basic building blocks of life, and any organ system, you must begin at the cellular level. The next level after that is called tissue. And tissue is a group of similar cells that work together at the same job. So cells form tissues. And this is really interesting too, because talking to my friend Mr. John, viruses are often tissue specific. So they go after certain kinds of tissue. And we're going to be talking about the flu virus today. Tissues form organs, a group of tissues that work together to do a certain job. Okay, so that is an organ, a group of tissues that work together to do a certain job. And then finally, the last part of that is the organ system, a group of organs that work together to carry on life functions. The most important word here is life. All of our organ system, respiratory, digestive, circulatory, skeletal, muscular, endocrine, immune system, etc., they all work together. And organ systems are what make up our bodies. All right, so here we go. Let's talk about the immune response to the flu. And here is a picture of your lymphatic system as well. So this first card will give us an overview. So, a flu infection can begin with a sick person sneezing around you and sending a virus into the air. You can inhale the virus and it can inject one of the cells in your, one of the cells in your throat. The virus will then hijack that cell to produce more viruses to infect your body. In essence, cloning itself. It's the attack of the clones. Your body responds by sending killer cells to the infection site. Then it sends in macrophages, which can eat dead and infectious cells. These macrophages send out chemicals to trigger your body to feel sick. Dendritic cells then arrive and take fragments of the virus to the lymph nodes of the body to find a T cell and B cell that can bind to and attack the virus. Once found, the T cells and B cells divide to fight the infection. So you start out with a really basic, over-the-top response to the killer cells, and then you're going to get way more specific once you get your lymphatic system knowing what it's dealing with, sending out the T cells and B cells. And of course, with the virus fragments brought to them by the dendritic cells. So, T cells go to the infection site to selectively kill infected cells, whereas B cells send out antibodies which bind to and deactivate the virus. So B cells work to create antibodies to kill the virus. T cells work to kill infected cells. The antibodies bind to and kill the virus and allow healthy cells to regrow. Some T cells will afterward patrol the body for this virus as memory cells. And this, of course, is where we build up immunity, and this is the basic logic behind vaccines. Okay, so obviously you have to get sick, and that occurs through transmission. Here's a person sneezing, and that guy is definitely not liking it. So the transmission happens when someone sneezes, for example, and hundreds of thousands of mucus droplets are sent into the air at up to 100 miles an hour. Most of these are harmless, but some carry bacteria and viruses that can cause infection in the human body. Within minutes, the organisms will die out in the open unless they can find a host. And of course, there's been a lot of study on that recently, obviously with how long a virus can survive or linger on a certain surface, what kind of surface, how long can it stay in the air with microdroplets, etc. So right now in the world, the study of transmission is really, really taking on importance. Well, unfortunately, now you are going to be infected, and it's the tissue cells in your throat, the cells in the back of your throat that are going to be infected. You are the infected now. So the hairs in your nose are the body's first line of defense against infection. An enzyme in the mucus dissolves the bacteria and it's washed away. But sometimes, just sometimes, particles like the virus can be left behind and inhaled into the throat, trachea. It can still, however, be caught in mucus that sends it to the stomach. So you want all of these things to go to the stomach or outside the body. You don't want them to go into your windpipe and the throat. You don't want it to go into the windpipe or your esophagus. You want these things all sent to the stomach. The stomach kills everything it runs into. So if it reaches a throat cell, however, the virus will impersonate a protein, and that fools the cell into letting the virus in. So what I've learned is that viruses are like chameleons. They're like spies. They blend in. They try to trick your cells into thinking that there's something that they're not, so that they can go in and infect and spread. Their whole purpose is to spread and create more of themselves through cloning. So now the virus is starting to spread. Purple there is the infected area. So once inside the cell, the virus can take control of it. The cell will make thousands of new viruses. In fact, the cell is now a virus factory. From one cell, thousands of viruses can be cloned, and each virus will seek out another cell and then turn that one into a new virus cloning machine. So in essence, the virus, now that you're infected, the virus is spreading. A lot of talk in the world today about the viral load, how much virus of something you might be exposed to, and how that might affect how fast or how severe you get sick. So definitely when you get infected, a lot of it does depend on how many of the viruses you're fighting at that time, because now the virus is spreading and it's multiplying rapidly. So now you're going to start to show some symptoms. Here you are. Oh, here's the kid at least. He is not feeling well. Symptoms. When your brain senses that the body has a virus, its first response is to raise the temperature of the body to slow down the growth of more viruses. The interleukins trick your body into thinking it's cold, so you shiver to heat the body up. Blood vessels around your brain swell, and this is what causes a headache. Fun fact, when the body heats up, not only does it produce more immune cells, it also makes hair and nail cells grow up to 20% faster. Fun fact there. So the symptoms are arriving as the next two groups of cells are doing their jobs. The first one is the killer cells. So there is a killer cell. So what's a killer cell going to do? Killer cells patrol the body looking for suspicious-looking cells. Hey, you're suspicious. When they find something abnormal, like an infected cell, they spray a poison to kill the cells that are producing viruses. Killer cells are not very accurate, however, and the poison they spray also kills healthy cells in the process. Debris starts to accumulate in the throat from all the destroyed cells. So you actually have physical debris building up inside your throat. Not good. And the killer cells are indiscriminately killing healthy and infected cells alike. The next cell that is involved in this process is this great one called the macrophage. Macrophage is there. So what does the macrophage do? Well, the immune system has its own cleanup crew to prevent you from choking on cell debris. Macrophages are sent in to eat the dead cell debris, and they can even eat the invading microbes. They also release chemical signals called interleukins, and the interleukins travel through the bloodstream, summoning reinforcements to the infected area. Your body is trying to send the needed forces of your immune system, the needed cells, to go where they need to go to fight the infection. Okay? However, interleukins also cause the nerves to become hypersensitive, and even the slightest movement can cause the body aches or pains. And this is, of course, in the case of the flu. Debris not eaten by macrophages will be carried away on tiny hairs in the throat called cilia to the stomach, where it is digested. So we got the macrophages, so the initial part there. Let's talk next about the dendritic cells and their part of the process. So these are the dendritic cells. I think it's because of they look like dendrites. So dendritic cells scour the infected area collecting virus fragments. These cells then travel through the lymphatic system to different lymph nodes in search of a T cell and a B cell, which have a matching receptor to bind to the virus. So the dendritic cells are basically going to deliver up virus fragments to the lymph nodes so that the lymph nodes can create the B cells and T cells to actually fight the infection more effectively than what had been happening before, because the killer cells are just randomly killing everything that they spray poison onto. So let's talk about the lymph node then. So here's a lymph node, okay, and it's got the dendritic cell carrying virus fragment back there. So in the lymph node, dendritic cells offer up the virus fragments to find the one cell that can stop the virus. Once it has found the correct T cell and B cell, okay, these cells, T cells and B cells, will begin to multiply, and the body becomes a step closer to beating the disease. I've learned that B cells and T cells are integral and efficient parts of this system. So let's look at T cells and B cells. These look like, I believe these are the T cells, no, these look like B cells that are producing antibodies. And the antibodies, I discussed this with Mr. Collin, they're shaped like little L's. See that? Okay. My bad there. So, after docking with the virus fragment, the T cell will begin to multiply. Within an hour, there will be hundreds of T cell clones. They are then sent to the infected area. When the correct B cell is found and docked with the virus, it also begins to clone itself. Unlike the T cell, the B cell stays in the lymph and begins to manufacture millions of minute proteins called antibodies. That's in the picture here. The antibodies then travel to the infected area to fight the virus. So the B cells are creating the antibodies to go after the virus. The T cells are working to kill infected cells efficiently and effectively, far more precise than the killer cells. So let's talk about that T cell response. Okay, notice the T cells are very specifically attacking certain sections there. So the T cell's job is to kill off infected cells to prevent more from multiplying. T cells can pinpoint individual infected cells and not cause harm to surrounding healthy cells. So there are the T cells and the B cells, really, really important. And finally, let's talk about antibodies. And here are the yellow Y-shaped antibodies binding and attaching themselves to the virus. Once the antibodies reach the target area, infected area, they begin to target newborn viruses by locking onto their spikes. The viruses become paralyzed and can no longer infect cells. Yeah, I've been doing some reading lately, and there are pictures that you can find of different kinds of viruses and how they look, and many of them look similar. They do have similar structures, and they have these outside sort of spiky things coming out, and this looks like that's what the antibodies are doing to get them to neutralize the viruses locking on there. Yay, B cells. All right, finally, memory cells. So those are memory cells. Memory cells are former T cells. So after the T cells and the antibodies wipe the virus out, new cells will begin to regenerate. Some T cells will shrivel up and die, but others will turn into memory cells. These cells travel throughout your body for the rest of your life in case that specific virus ever returns. Of course, viruses like the flu can mutate, and in that case, the body will have to find a new T cell and a new B cell to fight it off. So it really is about finding those T cells and B cells that can fight off these viral infections, and the memory cells give you a kind of natural immunity to that particular virus. Moving ahead. And finally, guess what? We are happy again. Clicking his heels. It's all about that recovery. Only when the immune system cools off its effort to destroy the virus will your body begin to feel better. Coughing is a sign that the battle is almost over, and it is a sign that your body is trying to clear out cell debris. Although you may be cured, however, the last remaining viruses can remain in your saliva, which then can be spread to another human host. And of course, we've been talking a lot lately about etiquette with respect to coughing, sneezing. Don't cough or sneeze on anybody, because you don't want to, even if you've been cured, you don't want to get someone else infected with a virus. All right, so let's review the basic vocabulary that I would like you to write up and post on Google Docs. So let's talk about the cell. The basic building block of life is the cell. In this presentation, we've talked about numerous specialized cells that make up the immune system. So cells, and then tissue. Cells form tissue, a group of similar cells that work together at the same job. And that, of course, will be another definition you will write in your Google document. And organ, a group of tissues that work together to do a certain job. So cells form tissues, tissues form organs, and organs form organ systems. A group of organs that work together to carry on life functions. So you go from the cellular level to the many cells together, to the many tissues together, to the organs together to form an organ system. So these are basically the building blocks of organ systems. So it goes cell, tissue, organ, organ system. The immune system is a fascinating body system. I do have to say that all of these body systems that we have, so often they work together. The most obvious example is the respiratory system, which works hand in glove with the circulatory system, because the circulatory system is what is actually getting the oxygen that your body has taken in to the cells, ultimately at that capillary level, and making the exchange between oxygen and carbon dioxide. But without the lungs and the bronchi and the alveoli and all the different specific respiratory system tissues and organs, the circulatory system wouldn't be able to do that part of its job. So everything is interconnected and interrelated. It's a beautiful system. So I hope you enjoyed this one, the immune system and the response to the flu. We went from being someone transmitting it to us to getting sick, and now we finally recovered. So I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. Have a great day.